All right, this is my dad. Dad, you were born in what year?
I was born July 27, 1929.
The year of
That depression.
You always tell me it's the year of the crash. You didn't cause it, though.
I was born in July, and it didn't happen until October. I don't think I caused it.
All right, and where were you born?
I was born between Rookville and Roosterville, about 8 miles from Central Hatchie in Heard County, Georgia.
Yep. And your dad was?
Leon Hyatt, Lemuel Lee Hyatt.
And your mother was?
Ora Doreen Lovern.
Yep. And you were which child in the birth order?
Well, I'll have to count that up.
Well, count them up. Who's your oldest?
Goes J.D., Mabel, Pauline, who passed away,
Right.
and Mildred, and me, John,
And Charles.
Charles. That's it.
So Mabel's the oldest.
Yes. No, J.D.
JD's the oldest, number 1. Mabel's the second, number 2. Pauline, who died, is number 3. Mildred is number 4. And you're number 5 of all children. You're number 4 of the living. And then you have 2 younger than you, which were John and Charles, right?
Correct. Yes,
Right.
that's right.
So what's the very first thing you remember?
The very first thing is sort of fragmental and unsure.
Yeah.
But I either dreamed it or it's a figment of memory. My mother cooking breakfast in the house I was born in.
Yeah.
But I was very young, and if it's not reality, I don't know where it came from.
And and she died when you were how old?
When I was 3.
You were 3. And what did she die of?
Double pneumonia in both lungs.
Yeah. Now, did that just come on? Was that postpartum after Charles's birth, or?
No, Charles was 9 months old,
Yeah.
and
She just got sick.
he was born in May, and she died in January.
Yeah. So it was in the middle of winter, so
Yeah.
she might have got cold or something.
Yeah, we didn't have central heating. The central heating was the fireplace
Yeah.
in the center of the house.
Right.
In fact, we had a double fireplace in that house. One chimney with 2 fireplaces. One in one room, the other in the other room. Common chimney.
Yeah. That's pretty common construction in early housing. Was that the house you were born in?
House I was born in.
And that's the house that's located now where the airstrip is, Gum Creek Road
Yeah, that's right.
in Heard County.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Tell us what else you remember about when you were a little tad.
Well, another early memory was I went with my brother J.D. to sharecropper house that we had, which was empty, but we had a pasture there and a milk cow. And so each day, J.D. had to go out there and it was, I guess, an eighth of a mile farther toward Roosterville on that road. And he milked the cow. And so this evening, it was almost dusk. We were returning from milking the cow at what we called the little house. The big house was where I was born. Mm-hmm. And the size of the house determined the name of it. So on the way back from the little house, J.D. had this bucket about half full of milk, and he taught me that you can, by inertia, hold the milk in the bucket and swing it over your head. And I thought that was rather neat.
But you didn't try it yourself.
Well, I was too young for that.
I was about to say, I could see you being bathed in milk on that one.
I tried that experiment later. It works.
Now, just a story I remember. Tell me about the peas.
Oh, that was years later. Country boys, in those days, we farmed with mules. If we were not wealthy enough to have horses, if we were not. And the early expectation was to be able to plow, because until that time we had walked behind my dad, step in his steps in the furrow that he was plowing, and imagine that we'd be able to plow, follow the mule, hold the plow, so that it went where you wanted it to go instead of where it wanted to go. And so early assignment was to sow some peas in an area that had grain on it. And so you would, what we call broadcast the peas. We just throw them over the ground, and then we'd take the plow and turn the earth over the peas so that they would grow. And the sequence was you broadcast the peas, you plowed those under, then you broadcast more peas and you plowed those under. So I'd run out of peas and I went to the bag to get some more peas, and I poured them in the bucket, and I was just learning to plow and learning to gee and haw and whoa and get up. So I was all intent on this new accomplishment, plowing. So I poured the peas into the bucket, and it got near the top, and I said, whoa. And the peas didn't whoa. They continued to
a big barn
pour out. And so we never wasted anything, ever. So I was startled, and I righted the bag, and then I picked up as many peas as I could. And then they were scattered in the ground, so I just covered them up. And so, I suppose a week later, my dad was looking over the project there, and those peas had come up that I spilled, and there's a lot of peas in one place. And so he knew about me spitting the peas, and I don't think he was very happy about that.
What? How did he say it to you when he discovered it?
He said, James, did you spill the peas?
Yeah, that's what I remember.
Of course, I couldn't deny it. The evidence was
That was kind of like George Washington with the hatchet, wasn't it?
That's right. Shall I tell a lie? I still do.
All righty. Do you remember anything else before you went to school?
I lived with several different relatives because when my mother died, my dad was a farmer with 6 kids. Visible.
No, that's fine. So you're after your mother passed away, what happened?
Well, my dad had 6 children, and one of them was an infant, 9 months old. So he had a hard time dealing with that big a load.
Yeah.
And my mother had a friend who had no children, and she wanted to adopt the youngest child, Charles, and so she did.
And what was her name?
Grace
Cox.
Cox.
Yeah. And do you remember her husband's name?
W.D. Cox.
W.D. Cox. Okay.
And he was the postmaster at Bowden, Georgia.
Yeah.
And Bowden was where my mother was from.
Right.
So Charles was adopted, and it was hard for a man with no wife to care for 6 children, or 5 now. So his sisters took us for periods of time, and we were divided up into different families and moved from place to place. It was my Aunt Holly was the one that kept us, and Uncle Lydia Pullen, Ollie Kramer, Lydia Pullen, and my sister Mildred stayed for some time with a Blackstock family in South Georgia. And I couldn't come up with their name right now. My dad, in fact, he had such a difficult time with that, he attempted suicide. But it was with a gun. He was overpowered by relatives. And as a result of that, they put him in mental institution in Milledgeville for a time. And then when things got better regulated, he went to the soldiers' home in the hospital in Washington, D.C., Walter Reed Hospital. He was there for a time. But after a while, he was able to regain control. And he came out and he gathered the children together, and although he owned a farm in Heard County, Georgia, we did sharecropping with my uncle Ples in Cleveland County, Alabama.
That's Pleasant Woodard.
Pleasant Woodard
Hyatt.
Named after his grandfather.
Right.
And I remember that well because I went to first grade there at Ranburne, Alabama. And after that year of sharecropping, we gathered again on our farm in Heard County, living in the big house. Out of sequence, there was a time when my dad and John and I lived for a short time in the little house. I remember that because it was cold winter time, and we were sitting close at the fireplace, and my dad chewed Brown's Mule chewing tobacco, and so he took a bite, cut a piece of Brown's Mule and put it in his mouth, and so I asked him for some of that, and he said, "Are you sure you want it?" And I said, "Yeah." So he shared his Brown's Mule with me, and
How old were you?
I was preschool.
Preschool. Okay.
So that didn't turn out too well. Some years before I started chewing tobacco.
All right.
But we were there until my dad sold the farm. And that must have been 37. And he got $1,200 cash money for 100 acres of land. And I watched the man who bought it, don't know who he was, but he counted out $1,200 on the dining room table. And I was amazed because dollars were scarce in 37. And so my dad used that money to buy a smaller farm in Carroll County, north of Carrollton, Georgia, a place called Shady Grove. And my years from, I'll just guess at it, 37, I must have been 8 years old. So from the time I was 8 till I was 13, I lived at Shady Grove. And John and Mildred lived there, and at times J.D., but J.D. was going to school in Heard County at Central Hatching, and he graduated from high school at Central Hatching, and after that he came to Shady Grove.
All right, Dad, tell me what you remember about your grandfather. Did you live with him for some time?
Yes, I lived with him several times, and for pretty long periods of time with him and my grandmother, Alice Daniel's wife. And they were well along in years at that time, and I was quite young. But I had great admiration for both of them, except for their ability to discipline little boys. They were of the old school, and what the elders said was law. But they were not so rigid that we enjoyed our time with them. Grandpa had a handlebar mustache, which I admired.
Evidenced in a number of family photographs.
And he was a farmer, and among other things, he grew tobacco just for his own use. But he would pick the mature leaves of tobacco and twist them, twist the leaf individually and then twist leaves together and he made what was called a twist of tobacco.
Mhm.
And it was pretty strong stuff. Before it matured, there was tobacco worms, and in those days, the little boys picked the worms off the tobacco. Now, and for quite a long time before now, they put insecticide on them. And the tobacco leaves were velvet, very porous, and to get insecticide out of those leaves is
Near impossible. Yeah.
So my grandpa's tobacco didn't have any insecticide. So he chewed tobacco until he was 99. He started when he was 12 years old.
Yeah.
He ran away from home because his mother, who was a widow because of the Civil War, my great-grandfather Ples died in the war, not of Yankee bullets, but of sickness, typhoid fever, up in Illinois.
As a prisoner of war.
Prisoner of war, yes. And, well, actually it was Indiana. He died in
Federal Hospital.
He died in the Federal Hospital, yes. But he was imprisoned in
Mound City, Illinois. Mound City, no. Indianapolis, Indiana, in the State Fairgrounds.
Yeah, that's right.
At Camp Morton.
That's right. But anyway, he, from the time he was 12 years old, because his widowed mother married another man.
He didn't like that.
No. He wanted his mother, I suppose, to remain a widow all her life.
In memory of his dad.
Yes. So he ran away from home and he lived with his uncle, Uncle Frank.
Yeah.
And he started chewing tobacco when he was 12, and he chewed it until he was 99. And he never got any mouth cancer
or anything.
So I suppose he grew healthy tobacco.
He was a tough old bird.
Yes. But enjoyed my time there. He had a shop across the road from his house. And I loved that shop. It smelled good. He had a forge in there. And
he did blacksmithing on the side?
Well, he did personal blacksmithing. I don't remember him doing it for other people. But anything that needed smithy in his family, he was quite capable of doing it. He could put tires on wagon wheels, which is quite an accomplishment with a forge, because you have to make them little undersized and weld them without a welder, and then expand them so that they'll go over the wooden wheel and then shrink them. And I never knew one to run off of the wheel. He was good. Shall I tell them about the experience in the shop?
Yes.
I went there as often as I could. And in the summertime, of course, I went barefoot. Everybody went barefoot except adults. And so my grandpa was working in the shop. And the shop had a dirt floor, so when he cut a piece of metal, he'd heat it in the forge and cut it on the anvil, and the scrap he threw on the floor. And I walked in with my bare feet, and there was a piece of metal that just wasn't still red on the floor. And I stepped on that piece of metal, in the hollow of my foot. And I suppose quite an outcry. It's so far back that some of the details I don't remember.
How old were you?
I don't know.
Preschool?
John, you're already 40% off all canvases. So.
Yes, I suppose I was still preschool. But anyway, the grown folks grabbed me up and carried me, I suppose maybe a quarter of a mile, to where Aunt Ida Craven and Uncle Sam Craven lived. And Aunt Ida had the ability to talk the fire out of a person who was seriously burning. And so she breathed on and mumbled on my little burned foot. And I don't know what happened to the fire. Anyway, I recovered from that, but that was an early experience that I remembered. But I still love that shop. I can still smell it.
Is there anything that you remember about your grandmother, Alice Daniel?
Yeah, she liked Bruton snuff. And she used a black gum toothbrush with her Bruton snuff. And she'd get a collection of that snuff on her toothbrush and stick it in her mouth.
When you say a black gum toothbrush, you mean a twig from a black gum tree that's been chewed on, right?
Well, they
split up.
She'd beat on it with a knife handle or something and
fray it.
Yeah, frayed the end of it.
Now, was she the one that had a servant or a friend, a black lady?
Yeah, she was the daughter of John A. Daniel.
Right.
John A. Daniel was a good friend and fellow soldier of the father of her husband, Jeff.
Right, Cousin Woodard High.
Yes, and they served in the Company K of the 34th Georgia Infantry, and she was definitely a Daniel. She had Daniel characteristic. I loved her dearly, and she enjoyed fun, and she was a good cook, excellent cook. And so I remember good times at her house. I remember us going to a creek bank where there was white clay. And we'd get that and we'd face the fireplace with it. And when it was wet, it was gray, but when it was dry, it was pure white. And so, since she used snuff and Grandpa used tobacco, from time to time, you had to repaint the fireplace. And she taught me about making brooms from broom sage, and I enjoyed that. And so our house brooms were not bought, they were broom-made, straws tied together, and quite adequate. She also made huckleberry pie, and I loved that huckleberry pie that she made. She was a good cook.
Hard to find huckleberries these days.
Yes, it is. I remember one time while I was living there, I had the croup. Serious croup. I don't think it's whooping cough. But I thought I was going to die. In fact, I was sure I was going to die. And I was in bed for several days. And I couldn't eat during that time. I was seriously ill. So maybe it was whooping cough, I don't know. But when I was recovering and she thought I could eat again, she made some axe handle soup.
What's axe handle soup?
Axe handle soup was beef stock with a small amount of cornmeal in it, you know.
Yeah.
Not enough to make it thick, but just enough to add a little nutrients to it, I suppose. And so that was my first recovering meal, axe handle soup.
Made by Grandma Alice.
Grandma Alice, yes.
How long was John A. living? Do you remember him personally?
No, my sister Mildred, just older than I,
Okay.
remembers John A.
Okay. So he died either before you were born or shortly after you were born?
Well, he died in the early 30s.
And you were real small.
Supposed to have seen his tomb in Carrollton,
Yeah.
Beulah.
Yeah.
But I think it must have been 32 or 33. when
Yeah.
he died.
So you were a very small child.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Right. I had mentioned earlier, Alice. Didn't Alice have? Was it Alice or was it somebody else that had a friend who was a black lady?
Alice had a servant, Adeline.
That's the one. That's what I'm talking about.
Adeline lived in Grandpa's rental house.
Mm-hmm.
And people who worked on Grandpa's farm, he also had a 100-acre farm adjoining my dad's farm. And Adeline and her daughter and her daughter's children, her grandchildren, lived in that house. And my brother John and I played with those children. And when time came to eat, if we were closer to Adeline's house than Grandma's house, we'd eat at Adeline's house. And
how did this relationship between Alice and Adeline come to be?
I don't know, but they were close friends. And she was a sweet lady. Her daughter's name was Dilsey.
Dilsey.
And I don't remember the children's name. I should remember the oldest son's name, but right now it pleases me.
Adeline was a good cook.
Excellent cook, yes. So, good cooking there. My grandma, Alice, had an aunt whose name was Aunt Jo, or probably Josephine Hester. And she lived quite a distance. She was on the other side of Roosterville somewhere. I wouldn't be able to locate that place now. But Aunt Joe and Uncle Eb were living on the place that their family had known prior to the Civil War. And they had an elderly black couple living there with them. And they had been slaves as children on that farm. And of course, Lincoln freed them. But they didn't have any place to go. They didn't know where to go. And where they were, they had a place to sleep, food to eat. They had to work. But they continued just as they had before the war. And of course, this was years after the war. It was in the early 30s. So they were quite old and gray. And when we visited with Uncle Eb and Aunt Joe, we children visited with this couple. At one time I knew their names, but now their name escapes me. But they were slaves that were rehabilitated to the new life of freedom, but still they were not free.
Yeah, they chose to continue to live with the Hesters.
That's true. Yes.
We've got a little dish that belonged to Alice that you said something about she would use that dish to put grease on the heads of the chickens.
Yeah, my cousin, Maureen Pullen. What's Maureen's new name, Margaret? Maureen.
Anyway.
Anyway, she's gone to heaven now. But Maureen, when she was a teenager, was visiting Grandma. And she stayed with her evidently 2 or 3 days. And she was interested in, the life on the little place there. And Grandma had some hens, chickens, and she would gather the eggs. And she had a setting hen, had eggs to hatch. And mites are a little insect that prey on chickens and birds and so forth. And when they're setting, they're sort of confined to the nest of their own accord. And the mites, I guess, increase, and they get in the feathers on their heads. And in fact, they'll lose some feathers, sort of go bald. And so my grandma, she had a mixture of lard, probably a little turpentine in it, and she put this medication in a small bowl, about the size of really smaller than a cereal bowl. And she and Maureen went to the hen house, and Grandma rubbed the setting hen's head with this medication to keep the mites from bothering her. And so when when Maureen was ready to go home, she told Grandma that she wanted something to remember her by, because Grandma was getting old. And so Grandma gave her this little bowl that she used to rub the chicken setting hen's head to get rid of the mites. And she also gave her a little tumbler, green glass tumbler, that her dad, John A. Anderson, had bought in Birmingham, Alabama, and brought home to his two girls, Alice and her sister.
That's okay. We'll worry about it later. While we're on the subject of home remedies and medicine and stuff in that time, you want to tell us about Black Draft?
Black Draft was a family medicine that the adults were sure that children needed. I suppose adults felt they needed them sometimes, but they were sure that children needed them. And in fact, there was a time when they decided that we needed some once a week. And so we go through the routine of black draw and trips to the privy.
So it was a purgative medicine.
Purgative medicine.
What did it taste like?
Oh, it had a terrible taste. Terrible taste.
Was it a powdery
Powder.
stuff?
Yeah.
Tell me what you remember about Mahaley.
Well, Grandma Alice wanted to go to get her fortune told.
Well, first of all, who was Mahaley?
I'll tell you in just a minute.
Oh, okay. All
She
right.
wanted to go once a year to have her fortune told. Mahaley was a bona fide witch. And actually, she was related to my grandfather. I guess they were first cousins.
Which grandfather?
Jeff.
Jeff.
Yeah. And
She was a Lancaster.
she was a Lancaster, and my granddad descended through the Smiths. He was a Smith.
Go ahead.
Before he was a Hyatt.
Right, but through Pink, Marianne
His mother.
Carden Smith.
Hyatt.
Right.
And Carden Smith Hyatt.
Who's referred to in Pleasa's letters as Pink.
Yes. And so Pink was a Smith.
Right.
And the Smiths and the Lancasters were descendants of the same
Yeah.
clan and or neighboring clans, and so they married
Yeah.
together. Hence, my granddad was actually a cousin to Mahaley. But Mahaley was a bona fide witch. People came, well, they came from Atlanta to Roosterville to get her opinion about things. In fact, murder in Coweta County,
She testified.
she testified in that trial that ended up in a fellow being electrocuted for murder. And so she had quite a reputation. People testified for her ability to find things. They'd lose a ring and they'd go to Mahaley and she would tell them where in their house where she had never been to look. And they testified that there
She-
it was.
She did that for a movie star for...
Edmund Keith.
No, it was the Oh, I can't remember her name. She lived in Alabama. Has got a funny name. And I can't remember it right now either. I'll tell you when I remember it.
But anyway, she was a bona fide witch. And my grandma had no business.
Consulting.
Yes. But I and my brother went with her 1 year from, I guess that must have been 36. We were living in Alabama. I mentioned earlier we sharecropped 1 year with my uncle cousin Woodard Hyatt. And while there, my grandma wanted to go see Mahaley. And we went along. So we must have gone twice because I remember being at Mahaley's. And I remember an incident where we didn't go and Grandma went, and a strange thing happened. I'll tell you about that. Anyway, she told my grandma, said, when you get home, said, one of your grandkids will have a bloody nose. And John and I had a steel wheelbarrow wheel, and we had a iron rod that we ran through it, and we would run rolling that wheelbarrow wheel in the yard of the house. And if you go too fast, you lose your footing. And evidently, I don't remember which one, but they say that one of us bumped our nose on that wheel and got a bloody nose. But I wouldn't swear by that. That's the tale that I hear from my childhood.
I remember the movie star. It was Tallulah Bankhead. And Mahaley found a ring for her by remote. And that's in Celestine Sibley's book. Celestine Sibley has written about Mahaley Lancaster. Do you remember what Mahaley's house was like?
Yes, I do. It was a little, I guess, 2-room house, low on the ground, and very ill kept. I'm talking about the structure of the house. Wasn't painted or anything. And in the backyard of the house, or in the field behind the house, she had perhaps 100 or more bales of cotton. And they had been there for so many years that the jute wrapping called cotton bagging was rotted on it, and the bales were coming apart. Mahaley, when the bottom fell out of the stock market, she had all this cotton to sell, and all of a sudden it was worth virtually no money. And so she was waiting
for the price to come back up.
To go up on that cotton. And she had a considerable amount of cotton that she was never able to sell.
Yeah, she dressed funny.
Yeah, her brother was in World War I, and she liked his cap and his overcoat and his combat boots. And she would wear those, I suppose, affection for her brother. But she'd wear them to downtown Carrollton, which was, that was big town. Actually, it wasn't then, but it was the biggest town we had.
Yeah. When Grandma came into the yard to have her fortune told, Mahaley said something to her.
Yeah, quite a few people would come to have their fortune told, so there'd be 8, 10 people out in the yard waiting their turn to have their fortune told. And you had to put money in her palm, $1. And $1 was
A lot of money.
it was full pay for a day's work for a grown man. And so Grandma had come, and she was waiting her place for the fortune telling. And Mahaley, having completed the assignment of the person at the front of the line, came out on the little veranda and saw my grandma out there under a shade tree. And she said, "Why, Cousin Alice, come on in. You don't have to wait out there." And Grandma had her bonnet on. She pulled her bonnet down over her eyes, and she said, "I ain't your cousin." She wouldn't claim kin, but actually she wasn't, but her husband was kin to Mahaley. But Grandma wouldn't.
Didn't want no favors. Didn't want no favors from Mahaley.
No.